I want to start off by saying thank you so much for joining us for this webinar today, folks. Us at Pax8 are lucky enough to be in part of one of the biggest MSP peer groups in the world. All we do from 8 to 5 is talk to MSPs like yourself, ranging from 1 to 5 employees all the way up to 100, and scattered throughout Canada and the United States. These are two topics that were highly requested amongst our partner base, not only from a functionality and operational standpoint, but also a way for them to differentiate themselves from the competition. So before we get rolling here, folks, I really want to just do a quick intro to the members of the team that'll be on the call today. My name is Ryan Brooks, and I am the Cloud Solutions Consultant dedicated to your account with a focus in continuity as well as security. We have Mr. James Avery on the call, who is a Cloud Solutions Advisor over here, as well as Mr. Jordan Taj. Both these gentlemen focus on Office 365. They're highly specialized in PSA integrations and are your day-to-day account reps. On the technical side, who will be leading the general demos for us today will be Daniel York, who is the Partner Solutions Manager, and then Thomas Welton, who is a Partner Solutions Engineer over here and our lead for nuvolex. So without further ado, I'm going to hand this off to Jordan Taj. He's going to give us some quick background on nuvolex's Office 365 multi-tenancy, what that means for your organization from a business standpoint. We'll then hand it off to Mr. Thomas Welton to do a general interest demo. From there, we'll go into phishing prevention, remediation, and response, some strategies you can use internally with Office 365, and we'll show you a tool as well. So I really want to hand it off to Jordan here to cover a little base overview on nuvolex.
Thank you, Ryan. Much appreciated. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for hopping on this call today. Much appreciated. Please don't hesitate to type your questions in the chat box there. Bunch of nerds for sure. Absolutely, Rob. That's why we're all here in the tech business, right? But that's good. But okay, so honestly, really excited to show you guys this multi-tenancy tool from nuvolex here today. We had our partner summit here in Denver, and we asked the partners if we could wave a magic wand and fix anything or make something better, change anything, what would it be? Majority of the partners, came forth and said, multi-tenancy from Microsoft. They're experiencing a lot of pain points around, their tier 1 techs, too much time on Office 365 support tickets, onboarding and offboarding users. It takes a lot of time to do that, resetting passwords. The high level techs, spending too much time writing and troubleshooting PowerShells, rolling those out every time Microsoft makes an update, can be very time consuming as well. The hardening of Office 365, also very time consuming. You can't apply that across all of your customers. And, the role-based access controls is non-existent, in a multi-tenancy. So basically all of your lower level techs have the keys to the kingdom today where they could go in and, change anybody's environment if they were disgruntled, if anything happens. So huge security risks, arise in this as well. So, the questions, how do you manage those Office 365 tenants today? How long is it taking you to mitigate and reset those passwords? How long is it taking you to offboard and onboard those clients? We tested this on an MSP here in Denver, one of our more established MSPs, do a ton of Microsoft business, and they were able to make their techs 4 times more efficient by simply implementing this tool, obviously increasing their bandwidth, increasing their return on their investment here. So we'll get into some features, some other features like the super click, a great multi-tenant super click, which will, allow you to make changes up to 100,000 users. I think they tested it on in the past. And but I know that Thomas is going to be able to show you all of this more in the demo. So without further ado, I'm going to pass this over to Thomas to kind of go in more detail about those things I was just talking about and how this can help you and your business and what it looks like.
Perfect. Thanks, Jordan. Thank you, Ryan, there for the introductions. Tom here on the Pax8 Partner Solutions team. And let me go ahead and share out my screen here real quick, and we can get started. Let's see here. Perfect. And are you guys able to see the nuvolex screen there? Great. So what we're looking at here on the nuvolex platform, before we get into the granular effects, is kind of to speak generally about what we're looking at here. So we are just signed into a website, and nuvolex is going to be a SaaS application hosted entirely on Azure. So it is going to live and remain inside the Azure that we already know, love, and trust. In fact, your nuvolex credentials will actually be your Azure credentials to get signed in. So with that, we're signed into our nuvolex platform here. So what we're presented with right away is one of our tenants. And so if you guys are inside that Microsoft documentation regularly, you'll recognize that Contoso tenant. And here in my drop-down menu, we do have an alternate tenant that we can work with. But again, as Jordan alluded to, scalability is really infinite, to quote the nuvolex team. So whether it's 200,000, with tenants or users here, really it's going to depend on what Azure can handle. The answer is a lot. So with that, yeah, the real-world applications of this up to 120,000 users, they're working with a different country there that happened. It's just really amazing to see that work and be able to push those changes across. So as I flip between my tenants here, what I do want to showcase, is the ability to pull up a list of users here without necessarily needing to dive into that incognito window. I'm not fighting the cookies or the cache browser or staying signed in. I simply go up here to my tenant, drop down, and select the tenant that I would like to work with. And then with that, user management is going to be a very simplified process. Let me go ahead and click into our user Adele here in Contoso. And what you're noticing going on down here and kind of throughout the demo is you're going to see a little bit of that loading icon, and that's by design. And so the nuvolex team has made this as lightweight as possible, very much leveraging those graph APIs to call Microsoft to get all this data kind of on demand. So two of the most important features that we're going to work with, on a day-to-day basis with individual users are going to be that reset password button. It's got its own dedicated button right here for it. Very, very simple thing to initiate. We can either set that temporary password to have them change it upon that first-time login, or allocate a password ourselves, ensure that we do get a good, strong password. Drill back into Adele here again, and then we'll talk a little bit about their license management. So you can see here that we are able to affect several changes, of which I'll be able to cover mostly here in just a bit on our multi-user SuperClick. Let's take a look at these service plans here, or their licensing SKUs, and you can see that this user Adele has been allocated an Office 365 Enterprise E5 license. We've got our Visio Pro, as well as an EMS E5 down here at the bottom. Say we've determined this user no longer needs that EMS E5, to remove and add licenses is going to be as intuitive and as easy as clicking these plus minus buttons. Clicking the minus button will remove it. Clicking save will propagate that change. And on the other side of that, I can go ahead and select that plus sign. It'll add a service plan drop down here, and I'll be able to pull from my available licenses that I do have. So I don't have to sort through the Microsoft catalog. These are the active and available licenses that I have on my tenant. So we can go ahead and select that license and be able to kind of drill into that a little bit more. You'll also notice that we have the ability to kind of, turn off and on these granular functions. So if we determine that we're not going to be using SharePoint, we can simply turn that off right from the screen, press save to push that change across. Perfect. So I'm going to step out now and show you what the setting up changes across multiple users would look like. So I'm going to go ahead here and I'll select all 26. Again, scalability not being an issue, 26, 2600, 260,000 potentially if it became applicable. But I've got them all selected here. I'll head up to my hamburger button in the top right, go all the way down, and we will open up our SuperClick engine. And the SuperClick engine is going to be a batch automation tool. And so it's really comprised of about 3 primary components. You can see here we have a list of all of our users selected, and we are able to kind of pare down this list at will. So we determine, maybe Megan and Nestor, we've already worked with them. Let's go ahead and remove them from the list. We've got our list of 24 users here. This will be our action panel in the middle where we do set up these changes. And then on the right side, I just want to call attention to the fact that there's nothing in here now, but as you see me add, functions and clicks to this, you're going to see a list, kind of a shopping cart built out of the permissions that we're working with. So let's go ahead and get into a calendar here. It'll be on my PSE tenant. Perfect. So again, very easy to pivot to an entirely different tenant there. As you can see, we'll go up, open up our SuperClick here, curate our list of users to who's going to be receiving these changes, and begin pushing these changes across. So we can go ahead and add a review for Marcus's calendar there. Head back up to our action panel here. You can see we can remove permissions in that same style, as well as some of these delegations. So let's go ahead and add a delegation as well. And we'll do a send on behalf here. But again, we could do the send as or that full access. Moving a little bit down the scroll here, you can see that we do have a assignment and unassignment of our service plans. So this is a fantastic use case in order to keep your sanity when we're changing and upgrading those license paths. So it can sometimes happen where we either over permission that user with a second set of licenses or leave them unlicensed and leave them out in the cold, potentially having to do this outside of business hours, or affecting that end user. So as you can see there, I've gone to unassign our E3. We will be removing the E3 from all 26 users. And in that same set, in the same super click, we're going to go to assign service plans, and we'll go ahead and upgrade our licensing paths. So here we can see we have our E5s available, again, with our granular control. Maybe we won't be leveraging SharePoint. Maybe we'll just go ahead and turn off that whiteboard and Yammer just because we don't use those as well. And that'll be available on the right side that we're going to go ahead and assign all these users that E5 plan as well. We have the ability to set password assignments there, kind of that group password if you guys do prefer that. And then we can add some groups in here. So we can go ahead and click on our security groups here, maybe go ahead and add in our Office 365 security group. I got Tom's security group in there, and you can see our changes here are adding up on the bottom here with none of these changes taking place until we click that apply button down there in the bottom right. Continuing a bit further in here, I do just want to touch on these exchange properties. As this list grows into the dozens and eventually hundreds there, as nuvolex continues to add functionality, we do have the ability for litigation holds right off the bat. Very easy to enable. Go ahead and throw 180 on there or set no expiration date. Being able to take action with that without necessarily needing to be an expert in these various portals. So with that, we are able to work with some of the other workflows in here. So we can head on over to our SharePoint. Type into our calendar. Again, we've called Microsoft. We've gotten a determination on that SharePoint. And yeah, let's go ahead and set up maybe a creator function there, or maybe add some SharePoint permissions into this there, or just contribute it. Set that up there. And then we can continue on to our OneDrive as well. So potentially there's a file in somebody's OneDrive that we would like all of our users to use. We'll go ahead and call Microsoft. We'll get a read on that file. Sit there and we'll give them just a read-only permission into that file. Maybe it's a day one welcome to the company file that we're giving them permission to, and they have it. In addition to that, we do have support for the teams. And so just ensuring that they're on that communication tool, hey, this is a new batch of sales folks that have come to our organization, or the new finance team, go ahead and be able to drop them into that team and apply those users all of the affected changes here. So as you can see, the list has grown considerably, into a scroll wheel, and we can really have no limits on this. So the limits are going to be your, flexibility with this. At any time, if I was ever curious about what happened with that, I can click into these various components and change those as well. So we can go ahead and turn SharePoint back on if that was something we decided to do after the fact. Again, clicking apply will kind of set this all in motion for this individual tenant, allowing you to work on other tenants as well with that multi-user SuperClick. Continuing on just a bit further here, I do want to touch on OU hierarchy as a fantastic piece of this software that simply is kind of bringing the modern age to this organizational unit structure. Traditionally, this has been part of that on-prem organization. We're able to set up essentially like a policy template in there and fiddle with it, but that organization didn't necessarily transition to the cloud. nuvolex here allows you to kind of set up a pseudo OU, as they call it, and create these from scratch. So let me go ahead and click on one we have here for onboard, and you can see we have 2 users in here. It's as easy as going ahead and adding a user. And as soon as we drop a user in here, they will be applied the OU rules. And so these OU rules are going to look very familiar because we just set up some of these here in our SuperClick. So as a user is dropped into this organizational unit for maybe a day one onboard, they will receive that calendar permission. They will be assigned the correct license. They will be set a default password, or we can set them up with that random password, as well as some of the domain iterations there, the send as, ensure that we are added to the proper security and Office 365 groups, and then those permissions, make sure that, on day one, they're able to get into that SharePoint, get into that documentation, and really hit the ground running when they start that company. So being able to set up these templated processes is a very cool feature. The last thing I'll highlight with the OUs is the kind of the logic of the system. So say, a staff member changes roles. Happens all the time where they move from a staff A to a staff B. The logic of nuvolex will prompt you to either include an A plus B, where the user would receive both sets of O rules, or, a removal of A and only B. So it's entirely up to you guys how you'd like to get this accomplished. The logic does allow for that. One thing I did mention was kind of the on-prem and the hybrid, with this being a cloud-only thing. So the answer is yes, this does allow for write back onto that AD system. So there is a very lightweight piece of software that gets installed on that server that it does allow for that identity management and that write back of some of those identities into that on-prem server, as some of our customers are still on-prem. Next, I'll go ahead and just kind of click through some of the portals here that we were looking at on the individual one, and they get a little bit more fleshed out, a little bit more robust here in some of the actions we can take. Teams is our communication tool from Microsoft. It's going to continue to kind of grow, and we are able to affect changes across that. Take a look at some of the settings in there, see that, hey, maybe we've got some guest settings that we need to take action with, as well as some channel management. So, we can confirm here at PAX8, we heavily use Teams, and we need to add and remove channels at all times to make sure that the right communications are getting to the right people. We'll have that similar functionality again with the SharePoint and a very cool, site breakdown of that file folder tree structure, which is just brilliant. This is very easy for me to read. I don't need to be trained up, the nuances of SharePoint in order to understand what I'm looking at here with that. We can click over to our permissions here. I can go into my owners. I can see who owns the site. Looks like we've got Mr. Wayne is in control of this site here, and being able to add and remove members from these groups, all from this nuvolex single pane of glass mentality. It's a very brilliant feature here with the SharePoint services. Our cloud services will be a very kind of generalized, stripped down view of this individual tenant's licenses. So here, if we'd like to kind of look in and flip between those licenses, we are able to take those and then drill into these users and take action on them directly from the portal. So potentially just a flexible way of looking at the system. Two other portals I do want to just briefly touch on are going to be the Azure and Intune management. As we learn more about the system, as we want to do more with it, functionality will continue to increase with that. Right away, we do have support for some of these VMs, and let me just drill into one to show you what we're talking about. So we get a great read-only on a lot of the statuses here. We can see this one has been stopped. We get some information on that network. We can see what tags we've placed. But then here in storage, we'll also get a great read on a live VM of that VHD. So knowing where that VHD lives when we're working with that, if you guys work with VMs, is a great way to double check yourself. With that, we can kind of take some cursory actions either on an individual or bulk for all of these, and that'll be located up here. Again, if we needed to reboot, we have some gremlins in the engine there, and we just want to reset all the servers, we can do that right there, as well as that start, stop, deallocate, and edit the size once we've shut down that server and spun it down. Moving over to the Intune device management, this is a fantastic use case for nuvolex here for the rapid response and security. So the use case is that somebody calls in and says, hey, I left my laptop open, it's unprotected, it's in the airport and I'm already on the airplane. Somebody to be able to pick up a phone call, identify which tenant that we're working with. Hey, we're working with the MSPSE tenant. Let's head over to Intune. Okay, user, what's your name? My name's Marcus. All right, and this is the device. And so right away, without needing to go into that Azure management portal, without having to dive into all the technical specifics, I know right away that I'm looking at the device in question, and I'm able to take appropriate action on that device, lock it out right there, wipe it if unfortunately we know we're not getting it back, as well as get some of those clerical items out of the way, like those virus scan, and push that Windows Defender update. So with that, I will move on to the tenant portion of this. And so everything that we're looking at here is now going to step up that hierarchy level to an individual Microsoft tenant. So as you can see here, we've got a couple of tenants. We've got 2 deactivated tenants there. We've got our demo tenant set up here, in which we've installed our Active Directory agent and onboarded some services here. So I just want to show you guys here that our hamburger buttons will kind of change and curate based on what we have and have not onboarded. So these are all going to say synchronize to update services that we're working with, and we'll go ahead and be able to update that Active Directory agent. And if we were to click on a tenant where these services are already enabled, you'll see that we have the ability, or where they're not enabled, but we would like to enable them, we can install that Active Directory agent if need be, as well as onboard only the services that we're working with. You don't end up with a big bulky portal, very streamlined, very clean portal. Let me go ahead and select a second tenant here and head back up to my hamburger button. And what you'll see now is another iteration of the SuperClick. And this will be the multi-tenant SuperClick. And this will be pushing changes across multiple independent Microsoft tenants, that have nothing in common except for your management as an MSP. Changes like that, though, would include your contact settings. Just being able to drop all of your tenants in here for that peace of mind, knowing that they have the correct phone numbers, the correct emails, things like that to reach out to you guys. It's a very nice way to standardize and clean up your data. As well as being able to save this entire process as a template going forward. So as we add more and more customers, we grow our business, it's very easy to just super click one tenant, drop them in here, and have all these changes applied directly to them. So again, the changes here will grow into the considerably more dozens, if not hundreds, eventually. I foresee this product continuing to grow based off of feedback and where you guys want to take this product. But some cool things we can take right off the bat are going to be potentially that focus mailbox. I've got one customer that calls me all day, every day about the focus mailbox. Let's go ahead and disable that and turn it off. And then no more focus mailbox, and we can just disable that and kind of nip that one in the butt before it gets to us. Kind of going down into the permissions a bit further, they do have some support for some of these SharePoint and OneDrive settings. One that I do want to discuss is kind of this disallowing infected file downloads. So the nuvolex team has been very conscientious about security. They listen to a lot of the feedback. So they're actively working on, secure score updates, being able to push this forward. So not that we're locking down the real world security, but also achieving some of those goals that Microsoft has set for us as far as those security scores are concerned. Finishing up the very bottom, we do have some of those external sharing permissions, as well as being able to, audit some of those Intune settings. Again, with considerable functionality coming as soon as the next November release here, and then depending on what you guys submit as feedback, are potential candidates in here. So moving on into more clerical matters, reporting is going to be something that we're all very interested in, and there is a fantastic report that we just want to showcase real quick, and that's going to be our tenant license summary. So I can come up here, I'll select my tenant license summary. And what we're looking at right here is just a brilliant report that I'm simply not able to run on the traditional partner center. And I do have a broken out list of my tenant by tenants here. Each SKU is listed out, and then I have licenses assigned, licenses available, and how many are expired. And so this is something that's just fantastic at a glance right there. The thing that I've highlighted is the fact that we have 5 available Visio Pro licenses for our Contoso tenant. That's money left on the table. And so this is just a great way, something that you could do once a month, once a quarter. Be able to print out this, sit down with a cup of coffee, and kind of review everything at a very simplified glance without having to, again, click into and sign in and out of 100 different portals to look at 100 different tenants. You can generate this report and read it right there. Speaking briefly about how everything's tracked and audited in here, there is a transactions report that will just kind of absorb every click into nuvolex so that ourselves and our technicians are held accountable for this, and that we can go back and review changes up for 1 year in the past. With great use of that super click ability, maybe we did super clicks to 600 users, but potentially a missed phone number or something. Being able to go back and review changes like that based off the actions taken is going to be something that will be very useful for us. Go ahead and click into a super click here and just show you what that would look like. We're able to see a fantastic timestamp. This is our nuvolex admin that performed the change. We performed it to this user, and it looks like we assigned this user an Azure AD P2 license. So just the accountability and being able to track that through the nuvolex platform, a very useful feature. Especially useful in that is going to be going forward with our RBAC controls. And so this will be the nuvolex admins. And as you see, I've gone here to the top right. We'll open up our admin panel, and we'll get a list of our admins in the system. Super admins here are going to be very traditional, analog to a global admin. There's always going to need to be a super user that has access to everything. Yourselves potentially with this, be able to keep an eye on everything. But drilling down into these admin uses is where we can get very granular and very different, nuvolex users depending on what we do and don't allow via simple clicks and toggling the check marks here. And these will directly correlate to the left side of the screen there on which we are able to, see these services. So potentially we set our new technician up, but we might want to go ahead and disable that super click until we're sure that we trust that technician to be able to super click with thousands of users, and potentially I should be the only one deleting users, so I'm going to disable that. But most certainly they should be able to reset passwords, show that users group. But maybe they're not familiar with the OU hierarchy, so I can go ahead and disable that, as well as the additional functionalities you see down here, kind of finishing up with the various workloads that Azure, Teams, SharePoint, whether we are or are not working with those on a specific tenant, we can just turn those off at will. And with that, in the center of the page here, we can kind of silo this to specific tenants. And so, this really comes into use with kind of the teams and stuff and those larger volumes if we're working with an East Coast or a West Coast or potentially a franchise situation, or just for some of those high caliber clients. We can go ahead and ensure that admins only have access to the tenants and clients that we are looking at here. One further application of this is going to be the customer manager and customer admin role. And so this is a very unique case in which, simply Microsoft doesn't allow this without us giving them a global admin into our entire system. A customer manager would essentially be a global admin for an individual tenant, but this customer admin is really a curious thing here because this is where we can really get some great functionality. So I'm going to go ahead and disable all functionality for the purposes of this demo here, and we'll turn everything off so that this admin does not have the ability to do anything except for maybe, let's go ahead and turn off everything except for that reset password. So what you're looking at here is an admin in the nuvolex platform that is able to reset passwords and passwords only for the PSE tenant. They have no idea Contoso exists. It does not appear in their dropdown, and they are able to reset their own passwords, potentially saving you guys some of those headaches, the phone calls, the emails of that one customer that's calling you all day, every day, and all they need you to do is reset passwords. Find the tech-savvy guy there and empower him to be able to reset his password. Another application of this is going to be that reporting tab. And so we do have a lot of very security conscious, a lot of compliance heavy tenants, and they're more than happy to have us manage those licenses. They just want to be able to keep an eye on that and run those reports. And so this is essentially a read-only, again, for the PSE demo tenant, in which they can just run those reports, be able to take a look at those licenses, maybe look at those numbers without being able to take any actions at all, whatsoever on the platform. Again, with everything showing up in that transactions tab for us as the MSP to be able to keep an eye on anything that this customer admin is doing. So that, again, is going to be that role-based access control. And again, to remind everybody how this is currently done, traditional partner center experience essentially requires that global admin, that radical over-permissioning. This is the answer. nuvolex is absolutely the answer to locking down that security and confirming to your end customers, your end users, that your entire organization doesn't have access to your tenant. Only the folks that we know and trust have access to the tenant and to the functions within that tenant that we need. Two final pieces I do want to touch on is how do we continue going forward with the platform. One of those things is going to be your voice, and your voice has a lot of weight right now with nuvolex. So we can confirm that Pax8 partners here have made requests to nuvolex, that are coming out in the next release of this system. One of those is going to be that shared to user mailbox and user to shared mailbox, vice versa, as well as some of the specific reporting features that have been. Please feel free to submit any feedback through the portal there. And then last but not least is the ability to teach ourselves. And so just a very great video library here. Hey, I want to know more about the SuperClick. Tell me about it. We quite literally get a video written by the guys that wrote the platform, step-by-step instruction to hold my hand and walk me through that SuperClick feature without necessarily having to dive down that YouTube or Google hole, Google or YouTube rabbit hole to find the answers to said questions. Perfect. So I may have gone just a bit longer there, but are there any questions here I can answer?
And Thomas, I think Jordan has one coming right now.
Perfect. Yeah, absolutely.
Yep, here we go. How long does it take to set it up?
Oh, perfect. So setting up a tenant will take just a couple of seconds, but it is kind of user volume dependent. If this tenant has a couple, 1,000 users, it may take just 2 or 3 minutes, but it'll be as easy as adding these tenants on a la carte. So you can see here on our tenants page, we just need a very simplistic information. Essentially, we just needed a verified Office 365 global admin, and we can add and onboard these tenants a la carte. Again, with the ability to add and onboard those specific services, only if we're using them will we add board them on a tenant by tenant basis. But great question.
Beautiful.
Awesome.
Thank you, Thomas.
And then here's the other one. Is there a trial or a demo available?
Yeah, absolutely. Ryan, I might pass that back to you.
Yeah, of course. And I will touch on the trial NFR piece towards the end for IronScales. Jordan, would you like to cover trials, NFRs, and pricing for partners on the call, please?
Yes, absolutely. So there is a trial available. It is a 30-day trial. Best to start at the beginning of the month so we can get the true 30. It actually does not start until you onboard your first client. So that's always something to take in effect there. And then so pricing, so normal pricing is going to be 80 cents a user. And we have a special pricing. So for anyone on this call today, we are being able to do that for 40 cents a user instead of the 80 cents.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for that, Jordan. And folks, give a little bit more info towards the end here regards to following up and getting some of these trials spun up in the workflow to get everything stood up on your internal seats. Mr. Welton, thank you so much for the demo there. Folks, I want to move into the phishing portion of the webinar. Phishing is a huge issue that we hear from our partners as well as end users. Now is the perfect time to talk about security and phishing prevention with a lot of the public data breaches that have occurred. At Pax8, we see security as a multi-layered architectural approach. We think of it similar to having physical security at a bank, per se. We're going to have locks on the doors. We're going to have physical security in the way of a security guard. We're also going to have cameras. We want to have multiple layers and redundancy just in case something makes its way through. As these hackers have evolved, so have their methods to harm us, obtain data to harm us, and provide crypto lockers and any other sort of harm to an end user's environment. So we need to evolve in kind. Some ways that you can stand up and prevent some phishing emails today without a tool would be setting up a phishing inbox. You could do this with your domain phishing at whatever your MSP domain is. This allows you an inbox for them to forward any sort of emails that could be malicious or they find suspicious in any way. This can cause some issues because you don't have a good process here to remediate those issues, to take any sort of action or a proactive approach to do any sort of action there. Another methodology we see a lot of success with is standing up an MX record redirect. Some issues that can occur there. If your MX record or your MX provider ever goes down, email flow would not continue. And one thing we've seen a huge uptick in is business email compromise scams. This would be the CEO emailing the controller, hey, I'm on vacation, we need to wire $50,000 into this account, or go buy, $100 worth of Home Depot gift cards, scratch off the code, send them over to me. This is something that an MX record redirect would not be able to detect or have any sort of security action on. Enter IronScales. This is a tool that we have seen massively adopted here at PAX8. This company was started in Israel, which is a hotbed for cybersecurity, and they're the only vendor that's ever reached out to PAX8 and that we brought on just based off our initial interest. They're the only ones in the space today that is providing a solution like this. They're actually baked into the APIs of Office 365 and learning the behavior of that end user and then making predictions based off emails coming through, whether they could be suspicious or malicious. Furthermore, it gives you the ability, or the end user the ability, to report said emails that throw a red banner ad that the AI catches and allows you to analyze them in a resolution center. And from there, you can either deem them as false positives, push them back to the inbox, or actually claw them out of every inbox across the domain. This is a great way for you to differentiate yourself from the competition. PAX8 is the sole distributor of the solution today, and it's a patented technology. So without further ado, I want to hand it off to Mr. Daniel York here. He is the Partner Solutions Manager and our expert on IronScales. So if I could get your demo here, Daniel, please jump in.
Awesome. Thanks, Ryan. Yeah. Hey, everyone. It's Daniel York over here at PAX8. So I kind of want to go through and just show you, a glimpse of what IronScales can do. It can do a ton, and guaranteed is probably one of the most unique solutions out there on the market right now, not only for what we provide, but just in general. So as Ryan said, this is a great solution that works in line with any gateway you have in place, because obviously it's great to have some sort of email gateway that, detects phishing emails and blocks those. But let's be real, we all know that there are still emails that do land at the end user's mailbox. People are getting smarter out there with that. So this is a tool that will actually give your end users weapons to be able to detect these things and report them on their own. So IronScales is really cool. It basically takes their whole solution and divvies it up into about 6 different sub-solutions here, which I'll go over just briefly to show you what I mean. And then, of course, we'll jump into a demo to kind of show you what this actually does and how it all works. But the first thing being Iron Sights right up here. Iron Sights is cool. It's a red banner that'll actually come up on your end user's mailbox for anything that comes through that looks fishy. And what I mean by that is it's going to detect things like domain lookalikes or impersonation attempts. So if Ryan sends me an email from his personal email that I've never seen before, it's going to have a banner that comes up and says, hey, we recognize Ryan Brooks, but we don't recognize his email. Just proceed with caution, right? Just kind of a fair warning to understand where this is coming from. And things like domain lookalikes, where, I might get something from Ryan at IronScales as opposed to IronScales, which is going to look really similar just at first glance. So these red banners kind of help guide you a little bit in your detection. This partners really well with the Iron Traps portion. Now, the Iron Traps is referring to an actual report phishing button that is on any Outlook mailbox. That means it's going to be web-based, the application-based, mobile Outlook as well. You will see a report phishing button that, regardless if the red banner shows up or not, if I receive an email that looks sketchy or fishy, I can actually click that report phishing button, and it's going to send a report on over here to IronScales, where you guys as MSPs can make that decision, whether it's a phishing attack, false positive, or spam. And of course, I'll show you what that actually looks like. So that is the actual weapon, right, that your end users have when it comes to detecting, phishing emails and things like that. All this partners really well with Federation. IronScales, I would say this is probably one of the coolest things that IronScales does. It is their crowdsourcing piece. There are thousands and thousands of users that use IronScales across the world. And say if there's an email that's been reported by hundreds of users before, and that email somehow lands in your mailbox at one point in time, basically IronScales is going to recognize that, detect it, and do the reporting for you in a sense. As opposed to waiting for your end users to report it, IronScales will say, hey, we're used to seeing this. This has been reported by many users before. We're just going to go ahead and let you know that this email landed in your mailbox. You can still do what you want with it, right? You can still mark it as a false positive, phishing, and spam, but at least you know that it's been reported before. Iron School, I won't get a ton into that, but it is a really awesome section within IronScales that allows for training and simulation. So if you guys have ever used softwares like that before, you can actually come in here and use 120 plus templates to actually test your end users on how they can detect phishing campaigns. You can build your own strictly from scratch. You can copy the HTML source code of pages that you want to mimic, and it's really cool because you can send those out as tests and get full reports on how your end users have detected it, if they've clicked on it, if they've reported it, and kind of see from there. So it's a really cool kind of training simulation piece of IronScales. Additionally, Iron Shield is an amazing feature that kind of coincides with everything. So Iron Sights is going to obviously look at the body of the email. It's going to let you know if it finds anything that's weird, maybe just looks weird, but Iron Shield is actually going to do a lot more heavy lifting. It's going to be the advanced malware and URL link protection. So beyond just the email looking weird, it actually has its own sandboxing environment that it's going to open up these links and attachments into and see if they're actually malicious or not. And say if IronScales does find that there's malicious content behind it, it's going to let you know in the report, which I'll show you, but it's not going to allow those links to even be open until you mark it as a false positive. So it's kind of doing this extra layer of protection, just making sure that no one really falls into that trap, and that's a cool, really cool piece on this side. Themis is going to be their AI. It's cool right now, but it's going to get even cooler. And really what Themis does is it attaches itself to every report and lets you know what IronScales thinks you should do. So it'll say, hey, Themis is 80% sure this email is a phishing attack just based off of machine learning of every user that's used this before. We're 80% sure it's false positive, and just kind of helps guide you a little bit. That's cool. That's awesome. But really the power is going to come in a future update very soon where you can actually set thresholds on Themis, which is really cool. So as Ryan mentioned, this is an end user power tool, right? This is going to be where your users detect and report and do all this stuff. But in the future update, you can basically say, hey, every single time Themis says it's 80% sure it's a phishing attack, I want it to be auto marked a phishing attack, right? So it kind of takes some of the work off of you. But I'll get into that and show you. But obviously, let's show you guys the bread and butter of all this and jump into the resolution center, where this is where all the reporting is going to be and where it's going to show. So I do have an email open. I'm using the web-based Outlook client here. This is an email I crafted up from an email address that's my personal one. So over here, you're going to notice I get a red banner right off the bat. It says, hey, we know Daniel York by name, but this email was sent from an unfamiliar address. So it's just letting me know, warning me. I can still look at this email. I can still click within here, but this is how the red banners are going to show. So to kind of show you here, maybe I do think that this is fishy from an end user standpoint. Just so you guys know, on the standard application-based Outlook, you're going to see a report phishing button up here. But on the web-based one, it is going to be in your Actions tab, and this is what it's going to look like: the little IronScales logo, report phishing. So I'm going to go ahead and report this as phishing. It's going to ask me what I think is the reason for the reporting. So I'm going to say, hey, I think it's just odd content. I'm going to go ahead and click report. Now, if I jump right into my IronScales portion, I should get that report here in just a second, showcase right up here. So in open incidences, this is where we're going to come before, this is where all of the reports lie before we actually make decisions on them. So this one's just open. This is the report right here. Notice Themis doesn't even have enough information in here. I'll show you when Themis really kind of kicks in, but I can see who it was reported by. So it's reported by user 2, when it was reported, automated, incident response. And then we can even look at sender fingerprint, which is just kind of nice. Basically what that means is how familiar is your organization with actually seeing this email. So of course it's a low reputation because I've never sent it from this email before. If it was, Ryan Brooks sending me one from his, PAX8 email address, it would show up as a high reputation because I'm used to encountering that. Now, real quick as well, you're going to see who reports this. If it was a Federation report, you will see that listed. It will say reported by Federation or any end user. I can come in here, see the body of the email. What does it look like? I can get super granular and actually look at the email headers if I wanted to really dive in and get a little techie with it. But this is going to show me the body of it. And then over here, you're going to notice it's scanning the links that are within that email. Just because I reported it, sometimes those scans do take a couple minutes, but it's going to scan. And I would say traditionally on Wikipedia links, what shows up is no indication of compromise. It'll be a green, no IOC. If it was malicious, if Iron Shield did deem that there was malicious content behind it, it would show up as red malicious to kind of give me some, ammo to use on this reporting. As I scroll down here, notice it'll show me any attachments, same type of thing, the scan on the attachments if there was any. And then this is going to show me any of the affected mailboxes. So anyone in my organization that received the exact same mail. The email. So what I'm going to do here, there's kind of a couple options after viewing these reports. I can mark as spam. What that's going to do is basically say, hey, I don't think it's phishing, but I think it's unnecessary. So it's going to kick it into the junk folder. If I mark as false positive, what's going to happen there is it's going to leave the email exactly where it was, and it's going to take away the red banner. So it's going to treat it as a normal email. Now, I like to highlight this too. Since I reported it, this is what your other users that receive the same email are going to see as well. A new red banner that says, hey, this was reported as malicious by your coworkers, obviously handle with care. So just so you know, double banners to really warn you to be careful with it. But yeah, false positive, if I mark it as that, it's just going to keep it in everyone's mailbox, remove the red banners, and totally treat it as normal. But one thing I really want to show you guys, of course, is if I mark it as a phishing attack, what's going to happen then is it's going to actually pull that email from every single affected mailbox instantly. And they're going to basically, it treats it as if they never even received the email. So to kind of show you how it works, I do want to click this. Mark as phishing. You can select a tag if you want. I'm going to say it's an external imposter. I'm going to hit apply. Let's go back to my email account here. Notice it's gone. It's already gone. It works that fast. And then I get an update because I'm the one that reported it. It's going to let me know what happened with it. It says, hey, after further investigation, your report was identified as a phishing email. So it's kind of nice as the users report it, they can see what happens with it. But every other affected mailbox isn't even going to see it. It's just going to be gone. Additionally, which is really cool, say if later on I come in and just so you know, it's going to kick it into active attacks. Active attacks basically is until the full remediation kicks in and it's removed from all mailboxes, it'll sit in active just for now. That can sometimes take just a minute or two to basically jump into your inactive attacks, closed incidences over here. But if I decide that later on this email was actually good, I made the wrong judgment on it, it's actually an email we need, I'm going to go ahead and say after the fact, I'm going to mark it as a false positive. I can type a comment on why I'm doing that, but I'm going to confirm. And what happens here is notice I have that email listed right here yet again. So it pushes it back into everyone's mailbox as if nothing ever happened. And again, just like false positives do, it's also going to remove the red banners. And then I get an updated alert that says, hey, after further investigation, we decided it's a non-malicious email. So everyone will receive that email right again. Treats it just like that. So it is the quickest, coolest way to really just push and pull from your specific Iron Scales Resolution Center. I can come in even to previous attacks, things that I've marked before as false positive, things like that. And I can even look at previous reports, everything like that. Just so you guys know, just as far as functionality, you get these little jump to reports here. So I can jump to who the reporter was, links within the reports, affected mailboxes, and so on and so forth. Another thing I do want to show you guys real quick, just as kind of a tidbit here, this one does come up a lot, so white labeled solution, totally white labeled. So in settings, I can actually come to my Iron Sites customization, and you guys will see I get my red banners here. I can totally customize what the red banner says. I can even customize the Iron Scales logo to be my logo. The only thing you can't change is the color, so it'll stay red, but you can come in here and truly change anything that's stated. So you can customize that from scratch. And then Iron Traps customization, that is the report phishing button. So you can even customize it the way the button looks. It can be your logo as opposed to this Iron Scales logo up here. So just so you guys know, totally customizable down to your end users and what they see. I'll end with this. This is obviously all done on your portal here if you were to log in, but excuse me. IronScales does provide an app that you can use on Android and iPhone that gives you access to your resolution center. Looks really pretty, so you can do it on the go. Anyone that's reporting emails, you can jump into the app, look at the email, get the same type of resolution center that we were looking at, but all mobile based. And then on top of that, you guys will also receive emails. So anytime someone reports an email, you receive an email that updates you that says, hey, you know, user one reported this, and you can actually make the decision from that email as well. Mark it as a false positive, mark as phishing, and mark as spam. So definitely a good tool on the go as well. There's a lot we can continue to jump into, but I'll kind of end with that just to kind of give you an overview of this resolution center here and how fast it works. Let me know if you guys have any questions on that, but that's pretty much all I got for you.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for that, Mr. York. We are nearing the top of the hour here. I had some questions come through via email, so we'll follow up after this call with the recording, as well as some answers to those questions that were pushed through. Thank you, folks, so much for joining this webinar today. We do have NFRs and trials available for you for both of these solutions. At the bare minimum, let's get these set up on your internal so you can get your hands on them, see what they're like, and at least protect your internal domain. As you can see, solutions that are brought onto the PAX8 line card are geared towards solving problems. Please let us know what's going on in your MSP today, your organization, and problems that you're experiencing, things that we can help you solve or solutions that can help solve said problems. But just to put a bow on it, thanks so much for your time today, folks. We will have the follow-up coming here soon, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.